I'm having a shocker. Okie dokie. Right. Claire, thank you so much for joining me today. Tell me, who are you? Where are you from? And where are you based now?
Hi, Joe. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am Claire Mays. I am from England, but I'm currently living in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, as you can see. That's not my backdrop, but there you go. That is, yeah, so I've been living here for a year and a half, 18 months.
Yeah, very good. So you would have moved, what, mid 2022?
We moved slap in the middle of the pandemic. So we moved summer of 2021.
Okay, my maths is shocking. Okay,
yeah.
Do you know what I'm going to do? How about we just cut this again? We'll start again because we're originally right at the start.
Yeah, 2021. Okay, yeah.
Mid 2021.
Okay, yeah, cut. Start again. We're nailing it.
Claire, thank you so much for joining me today. Tell me, who are you? Where are you from? And where are you based now?
Hi, Joe. Thank you for inviting me to this podcast. My name's Claire Mays. I'm from England originally, but in the summer of 2021, in the middle of the pandemic, we relocated to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
I see. So steamy tropics. Apologies in advance if anyone hears some of the amazing wildlife in the background. I've literally heard tweeting birds. Realistically, for those who haven't been to KL, there's probably, monkeys swinging around in trees and all of those other
literally lights. I mean, because I've got this backdrop, but out my window, I'm looking at the bananas growing on the trees right outside the window. So yeah, it is lovely. Even though we're right in the city, there are still you really feel like you're in the tropics.
Yeah, and a little different to where in England were you from?
Well, I'm from London, I would say. I'm a bit of a expat kid, so I had traveled when I was younger, but London is home to me in England.
Right. Interesting. So what did you do traipsing around as a child?
Well, my parents, my mum was a sort of pioneer expat in that so my mum, in the late 1960s, my mum, age 23, moved by herself to the Philippines. And she lived in Vietnam and Cambodia, Australia, Singapore, all within her late 20s, early 30s as a single woman. And then she'd been living in Singapore for about 3 years. And my dad, who was in the British Army, arrived so it's 1972, something like that. And he went to a party on a boat on his first night, met my mum, and 3 months later they got engaged, and they've been married 50 years next year. So I've had this growing up. And then my dad, with their job being in the army, we moved around mainly within Europe. We lived in Brussels, Germany, Bulgaria, all over the UK. So it's very much the norm. My grandmother lived in India when she was 16. My grandparents lived in Asia. So this feels very familiar to me, the idea of uprooting and moving. So yeah, here I am.
It's in your blood.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. I always sort of find it fascinating to think that like a single woman cruising around in the 60s and 70s in Southeast Asia by herself is just so fascinating. I love hearing those stories. I thought it was impressive enough that my parents, as very young in their early 20s, newlyweds, bought one-way plane tickets from Australia to Singapore, and then they backpacked from Singapore to London over 12 months. And I thought that was wild.
That is wild.
Yeah, so that was in the late 70s. But then to think of young women doing that by themselves, like what a trailblazer. That's so cool.
I know. And it's so weird because she's been back to some of those places since, and obviously they're just completely unrecognizable. But just the life there then for anyone traveling to those parts of the world back then. But as you say, to do it as a single woman, hats off to my mum.
Amazing.
And also she was there in really interesting time. She was there in Vietnam during the war. She got shot at on the beach in Siem Reap Ville. She was there when Pol Pot, was destroying Cambodia. Her friend, who she's still very good friends with, they saw each other last year. She was Cambodian. She and her family all had to flee. And you know, it's amazing. She was there at a really interesting time as well in history. So yeah.
Wow. And she never took up journalism. How funny would that have been?
Well, I think it's very suspicious. My brother and I have got suspicions, like, what were you doing, Mum, in the late 60s, early 70s in Asia on your own? She had various jobs, but yeah, we wonder if there was a bit of espionage going on there that she'll tell us on her deathbed.
Oh my gosh, that would be an amazing way to round out a life story.
I
How
know. Oh, and another thing, yeah.
cool. By the way, this isn't your real name. So good. Now tell me, what has taken you guys to KL?
Well, in contrast to my pioneering independent woman mother, I've come here as a trailing spouse on the back of my husband's job. Yeah, so we were very keen to move abroad. But my husband used to live in Japan. We very much wanted this experience for our children, and his job was the job that was more likely to enable that. And indeed, that is what happened. So his company transferred us here in 2019. They said they were moving us to Singapore in 2020. And of course, we all know what happened. That didn't happen. And the company then decided to relocate the job to Malaysia instead. The Singapore visas were very restricted during COVID, and it was easier to come here. So that's what brought us here, yeah.
Yeah, and where's your husband from originally?
He's a Brit as well. He's a Brit, yeah. English.
And so what were you doing in pre-Malaysia life?
I'm a barrister, so I worked in criminal law for 23 years, prosecuting and defending, but then largely the last 17 years only prosecuting. And for the last 3.5 years, I was working on the homicide unit. So I was a rape specialist as well. So all really nice things. So yeah, it was. I was based in London. My trials were at the Old Bailey. Yeah, that was what I did exclusively for 3.5 years, murder and death on the road. So pretty challenging work. I loved it, which sounds a weird thing to say about such a difficult subject matter, but I found it very, very interesting and motivating and really important work. So it was very, very hard to give that up. But we really wanted to do this. We really wanted this experience. So I packed my bags and here I am.
So how do you, how transferable quite specific skills within the law, how transferable are those skills to, being able to work elsewhere in the world?
Well, yeah, this is what I've discovered. I'm regretting. Well, I'm not regretting, but in some ways I wish I'd done commercial law, shipping law, tax law, or something like that, which are much more international, because obviously criminal law is pertinent to whichever jurisdiction you're in. And although Malaysia is based, as a former colony, is based on the British legal system, I don't speak the language to a level that would allow me to appear in court. I'd have to be called to the bar here, which wouldn't be a problem, but it's the language mainly. So it's been very challenging, because I didn't think I'd be able just to come here and be a criminal lawyer. I didn't think that would happen. I was hoping that my transferable skills would work somehow. But it's definitely been a lot more challenging than I had anticipated.
What were your expectations, I guess? What were you planning on doing in your mind?
I thought I'd get a job within 6 months. I thought it would be something using my background. And I thought something legal, but equally I was thinking, this is a new challenge, a new chapter. I'm open to anything. And I did get a job within 6 months, and it was using my skills. But I hadn't, so I was like, yes, this is all great. But the problems have come from there, that my expectations of what the job was didn't quite meet what I was led to believe. And the main problem has been the visa, because as a trailing spouse, I'm not legally allowed to work here. And you have to be here for at least 3 years before you can get what's called a talent pass, which means you are allowed to be here and you can work. And that would be for the whole family. It's a great thing. You have to apply. It's quite strict. It used to be much easier. Now, of course, it made it harder, but we're hoping that next year that will make things a lot easier. But so the job that I got was with the UN, was with UNICEF specifically as a consultant within their criminal justice department. Perfect, ticks all the boxes. And I signed my contract in May, but I didn't start until September because the visa. So they initially said, oh, and you can just start work. And I said, well, hang on, I need a visa to work, don't I? Oh, do you? Oh, right, okay. No, I'm sure it's fine. And I said, no, I need a visa. I'm not working here illegally. I'm not going to be part of the problem, especially as my job, working within the legal system. So then it took 4 months to get the visa. And then I said, well, will you change the start date of my contract? Oh, yes, we'll do that. No, they didn't do that. And now my contract comes to an end in May. And I lose my employment visa and I have to go back on my dependence visa. So I've got to start all over again from scratch, which is gutting.
It's so disappointing to hear.
Yeah.
I see. So it's like a common theme that people that I talk to on this podcast is that running theme of visa challenges. When you I guess when you started this role, did you slot straight in? It's been a full-time role. You've sort of got glimpses of what working life is like, or how has it sort of the actual role been that you've been in for the last however long?
Well, that's another frustration. It's nothing like what I thought it was going to be. The contract said that I'd be doing monthly deliverables and I would be paid for those deliverables. They haven't been monthly at all. They've been once in a blue moon. And whilst they're very well paid when I do them, I just haven't done enough. And I was very much held at arm's length. I naively thought, oh, great, I can come into the office, I can do my work from there. And they were very like, oh, okay, because I don't think consultants do that. But I needed that, having worked at home for 2 years for COVID, I wanted the delineation. I wanted to go into an office and feel different from being at home. So I did ask for a desk 2 days a week. And I would go into the office and sometimes they'd ask me out for lunch, but sometimes not. And people were very friendly, actually. That's not fair. People were really nice and they'd always stop to say hello. But you definitely, as a consultant, I was definitely, you're not part of the gang. And so I had that independence, which is good. But sometimes, especially when you come to a new country, you would like to feel a part of something. And you'd like that support. So I would go into the office, but that was just for me. I didn't need to do that. And when and if I did a deliverable, that was great. And I'd go to whoever I was presenting to, did some things online as well. And I've been allowed to come to a few seminars, which have been brilliant and they're really interesting and you feel part of something and you feel part of something important and it's a contribution and a contribution to the new country that you've come to. I didn't want to come here and not participate and not make a contribution. So that was really important to me. So it was all great on paper. And it should all have been amazing, but it just didn't quite live up to the expectations. And now it's coming to an end.
Well, it's disappointing to hear. I guess it's an interesting segue into what I guess immersion has looked like into Malaysia and into the community in Kuala Lumpur. Like, have you been able to, outside of work, socially be able to find a crew and your tribe and your sort of people, or have you also, well, not or, and have you been able to sort of be able to feel like you're not running and living in this parallel expat world, that you're actually being able to get your teeth into something that's local as well?
Yeah, I definitely have felt that. It's been, in terms of meeting people and building up friends and a community, that's been amazing. We moved to a compound that's very, very friendly, lots of local people, and lots of expats from all different parts of the world as well. So that's not been a problem. Through the boys, my kids' school, sorry, doorbell's going, through the boys' school, we've met lots of people, and I've also, I volunteered at a refugee school every week. So that's sort of, and that was really important to me. I'm just going to move, Joe, because it's going to be a bit
loud. No problems. Hold that thought. So we'll go back to before your doorbell, which was around the kids' school.
Yes, so meeting people through the kids' school, meeting people then from the refugee school where I work at, where I volunteer at, and that's given me, and that was really important to me. I didn't want to just come here. Lots of people come here as expats, and I don't feel they make any effort to understand or integrate into the society they live in. And you know, you can live in a very, very nice expat bubble, which is fine, but I don't think you should. You shouldn't ignore the realities of most people's lives when you come to countries with different, can't think of the word, economic factors, particularly with refugees, all of that sort of seedier side, crime, because I'm used, you know, that's the world I work in. I didn't want to pretend that none of that was happening. I didn't want to distance myself from that. So that's been really important to me, to make an effort to get to know the truth about Malaysia rather than just the expat bubble, because we're not just here for 2 years, we've moved here because we want to live here. So I wanted to have, without saying really, I mean, pretentious, an authentic experience rather than an expat experience.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I understand. It's really interesting. Tell me about the refugee school that you volunteer at. What's the setup there, and who runs it, and where are the people coming from that you're dealing with?
So they're Myanmar refugees, and they are not Rohingya. They're another ethnic group who are actually Christian, and it's run by two Myanmar refugees who've been here 10 years, and they have got a sort of apartment which for most families it has 2 bedrooms, and but they've got about 30 people living there, and it's a school, so they have sort of carved up rooms into tinier rooms, and this is classroom 1, and they all live there. And then they roll their beds away and get out the desks. And it's paid for by 2 women from a church group who are paying the rent. And then the volunteers, we all are. It was actually, I found it through another mum at the school where my children are at, and she was looking for volunteers. And I'm a TEFL teacher, so I said yes, I'd come and do that. So it's all expat volunteers and local volunteers now as well who come in, and we also, because you just can't ignore it. You know, we do donations, we bring in food, we ask around our communities. Then, you know, someone in my compound donated a load of milk from their husband's company. You know, we sort of, and one of the little boys in my class, so I teach 7 to 11-year-olds English, and his teeth were awful. And I was really worried about them. And I sent a photo of his teeth to a friend of mine in England who's a dentist, and she was like, oh my God, he needs help immediately. So I told the other volunteer teachers, you know, and one of them is a local woman, and her son is a dentist here, and he's treating the little boy for free, obviously. So it's amazing what you can do. But it's the refugees here. Malaysia didn't sign the UN Refugee Convention, so they have no recognition, no rights to education, healthcare, no right to work, nothing, no right to accommodation. But they're all arriving here in containers overland from Thailand. So it's a pretty desperate situation. Although now that COVID's finished, there are a couple. We've had 3 now have left, 2 to Australia and 1 to America. Families who've been given refugee status, who will now actually, one little girl, Elizabeth, they all get given an English name. They choose their English name. She wanted to become a nurse. And I remember when she told me that broke my heart, because I thought, you're not going to become anything. But now her family have gone to Melbourne, and she could be a nurse thanks to the kindness of Australians. And I find that so amazing that these people now have a chance. So whatever, and I tell you what, another thing, whenever I'm feeling a bit, you know, tearing my hair out and depressed about things happening here, it's a very, very good reminder and puts things very firmly into perspective. Because the difference is we've got options and they don't have any options.
How amazing. Kudos to you. I'm always in awe of people like you as well that are doing those sorts of things as well. It's awesome. I guess you've just nailed it there with sort of doing things that keep things in perspective and stuff. Have you got some advice for people that might be listening who are feeling like they're in that bit of a, I don't know, a doomsday spiral because that frustration around the things that you're still feeling, and still very warranted, the frustration that's all very relative for you and your personal situation? Have you got advice to others that have sort of found themselves in a challenging spot as far as their possibly inability to work or not being able to work how they're wanting to?
Well, I think several things. I think so. A friend of mine who's been an expat for a long time, she said the highs of being an expat are very high and the lows are very low. And I think that's really true. And I think if you know that and you sign up for that, you've got to accept the roller coaster. I think, like with anything in life, you just got to keep on keeping on, and you've got to stay positive. And in the meantime, what I'm trying to remind myself to do is, okay, I don't have a full-time job at the moment, and I don't have an income that would come with that. And that's, really, really challenging in a lot of ways. But what I do get to do is pick my kids up from school. I haven't been able to do that because I've worked full-time. I do get to go to their school play last night. I do get to go for a walk. I get up and I go for a swim. I get to meet a friend for coffee. And I know friends of mine who are working back in England, working incredibly hard, 16-hour days, what have you. They would kill to be able to go for a walk. They would kill to be able to meet a friend for coffee and to be able to see their kids when they come home from school. So it's appreciating that this is temporary. Everything's temporary. So this tough moment is temporary. And in the meantime, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to appreciate the things that it gives me, not concentrating on all the things that I don't have. So I'm going to count my blessings before my burdens and try and have that positive mental attitude. Because I think, listen, when you do get a job and you're stressed and you haven't seen it, you'll look back and think, God, why didn't I enjoy that more? So I'm going to enjoy it while I can.
Oh my gosh, I love that. What fabulous advice.
If only I could follow it myself.
Well, do as I say, not as I do. I think that is the best
Absolutely,
advice. Yeah. Now tell me, as far as being able to tap into both a local and an expat network and things, what have you found have been some really cool things that you guys have been able to do in this new sort of expat setup that you weren't able to do in a previous world of 16-hour days and, let's be honest, quite miserable weather a lot of the time? What are some of the things that you guys, as a family, have been able to do that's been really different for you guys?
As a family, I mean, we've done some amazing things, and the idea is that, and what I love is that we can just do them for a weekend. Like we've done, trips. We've done a lot of traveling around Malaysia, and we could have done those perhaps from England, but that would have been a trip of a lifetime. Whereas it's just the weekend. Let's go to the Perhentian Islands and go snorkeling for the weekend, and let's go and swim with turtles and sharks, and then we'll come home again. That to me is amazing. That what is on our doorstep now is really special. And because things are more affordable here as well, money issues aside, we have been able to do things that would have been a big birthday treat for the boys, for example. We can now do them on a Saturday night. So it's been great in that respect. We went last summer, we got the train to Thailand, put rucksacks on the kids, and we went backpacking around Thailand for 2 weeks. That was amazing. My in-laws are arriving this week, and we are going to Borneo while they're here to see the sun bears and the orangutans, and having friends come out as well. That's been really lovely. We've had friends and family visiting and experiencing things with them as well as a family. That's been amazing. We've done surfing and all kinds of things, but and going for a walk now involves a jungle walk with monkeys and monitor lizards, and also the weather is, coming from England, it's an absolute game changer. Although the weather, I didn't quite appreciate this when I came here, that it's not really like like Australia, it's not really an outdoor lifestyle because it's either too hot or it's torrential rain. So it's not as outdoorsy and as sporty as I would have liked, but I do love if you're out and you go out for dinner and you come out of the restaurant at 11 o'clock at night and it's just this beautiful warmth. Oh my God, I just love that so much. So as a family, we've just had, we've seen and done some great things, and just traveling around, and, the boys experiencing new food, and which is, successful in some ways and not in others. And being able to they've done their scuba diving bubble maker course. We've done, as I said, things like, it sounds ridiculous, but like going to a splash park, a water park for the day, which in England would cost a fortune. But here, that's an affordable thing we can do. And that's a great fun family day out. And because there's about 800 public holidays here as well, you do get the chance to do that. We've been down to Legoland, which again would have been unaffordable in England for 3 days. We did that here, so that's been really nice. But also it concentrates you as a family because you're away from your usual family and friends. So I think it's given us more concentrated time together, which we'd already had because of COVID,
well,
but in a very different setting. So yeah,
that's actually a perfect segue, because my next question was going to be, now in a post-COVID world, so I want you to try and think pre-COVID, when you were doing your big hours and working full-time and in London. How, I know it's tricky to answer on your husband's part, but how has it been for you guys having you in this current headspace? So you not being busy work-wise and busy career-wise, and a lot more, at home, but also with your brain not being as active. How are you dealing with that, like marriage-wise, relationship-wise, support-wise? Like, are you a nightmare to live with at the moment?
Well, my mum said, I'm sure my husband would probably say yes, but my mum said to me when she first came out, she said, "You are so much less stressed." And I hadn't noticed it because I am stressed because I've got other stresses. But I think also the subject matter of my work was very wearing and impactful. So I've been freed from that sort of transferred grief that I dealt with every day. So that's definitely cleansed me. But I think how on earth would we have coped moving here if both of us had been working full time? I don't know how we would have done that. And I do see real value in my role as 1950s housewife, because I have settled the children in. And when we got here, I had to homeschool them for 4 months. Oh my good God, that was horrendous. But if I had been working, what would I have done? What on earth would our children have done? My little one was only 6 when we got here. So I definitely think that I have had to adjust to the fact that, okay, it is my husband and I, both work full time. So we very much said everything 50-50, the cooking, we had a cleaner, we still have a cleaner. That was one thing that's a luxury that saves our marriage. We're not arguing over who last cleaned the toilet. So I think I've had to readjust the fact that, okay, yes, I am going to be doing more cooking. And that's okay, and that's fair, because Nick is working and I'm not working full time. I keep reminding him, listen, when I start working again, don't forget, this is going back. And I definitely, with 2 boys, I'm very much like, I don't want them to think that women stay at home and cook and clean and daddy works. They've never had that. I've always worked. So I'm keep reminding them, pick up after yourself, make your bed. We don't have a servant. Who do you think is going to do that? Because I think when I worked, I didn't need to do that as much because it was obvious. Whereas now I'm around more, so I think they're expecting me to do it, and I'm not going to. So they have to tidy up after themselves. I think for me and my husband, it's been, we really wanted to do this, so it's been amazing to have realised our dream, but it has placed an enormous strain on us because of the financial burden, and that's really hard. That's hard as a couple, isn't it? And you're far from home. We make sure that we always used to have a date night, and we can't do that anymore. And so we have to really make an effort to, okay, even if we just go for a walk around the block, because in our compound we can leave the kids while they're watching TV or something, to have that time together. Because when you're back at home, I've got a very good group of girlfriends who I would talk to, and I needed that sounding board, and I can still talk to them, of course I can, but it's different here. And I've met some lovely new friends here I can talk to, but it's different. So I realized that Nick and I, it's been really challenging, but at the same time, I love the fact that we've challenged ourselves and our lives in this way. And yes, it hasn't panned out exactly as we hoped yet. It will be okay, but we've shaken things up, and we're the better for it. So I would just say, be prepared for that. Don't come away with rose-colored glasses. And someone else said to me, which is very good advice, you're only moving your location. You're not changing your life. So if your husband annoyed you in England, he's going to annoy you in Kuala Lumpur. If your husband doesn't do this there, he's not going to do it there. Don't think you're suddenly going to have this new family life. You're going to argue about the same things. So as long as you know that, and you're not trying to escape from something, then I think you'll be okay. It's like with any marriage, isn't it? You just have to keep talking, and keep talking.
That is the most fantastic advice. I am totally going to put that in my little bag of goodies. That you're moving location, you're not changing life. That's such an interesting one. I love that.
Yeah. Because I think that's the important thing. You've got to look at your motivation for moving. Are you trying to escape from something? Are you trying to think this will solve all your problems? Is this going to suddenly... that wasn't our reason for moving. We actually, looking back, and when we were there, we had a very nice life. We had a lovely house. We had great jobs. We had great friends. There was no reason for us to move other than this itch inside us that we wanted to scratch. So that's, move for the right reasons, I think, is a really important one.
Well, Claire, I'm really, really stoked to have caught up with you, and thank you so much for sharing your story, and good luck with the job hunt. Like you said, it will come. It's just not working out at the moment, but it will come. Very much so.
I'm manifesting my job. Yeah, it will come. It will come. Thank you so much, Jo. It's lovely to talk to you too.
Thank you.
Okay.